Fans, we are back live with another edition of the Cheap Heat Productions Pro Wrestling Podcast. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling. And we have a very special guest tonight, a fellow Canadian, a man who really cut his own path, so to speak, in professional wrestling. One of the premier referees that you think of when you think of that role. And I would, of course, be speaking of Mr. Jimmy Korderas, who we will get right into it in terms of a number of aspects of his career. But before we do that, I would be remiss to not introduce Mr. Cheap Heat himself, the man, the future public servant known as Morris Shorthall. Morris, how are you tonight, sir?
I'm very, very good. Very, very good. A lot on my plate at the moment, but we're here really looking forward to chatting to Jimmy again. So it's going to be a good one.
Jimmy, welcome. And before we get into some of the other aspects of your career, I think the fans appreciate, how it was that you became involved in the business and specifically why you were attracted to the very important role of the referee.
Yeah, it's very different from a lot of people's paths. First of all, thank you for having me on. I very much appreciate it, and good to see you again, Morris. It's awesome. But I know a lot of people want to get into the business in some form or fashion and have an idea, a game plan, and say, this is what I'd like to do. This is the path I'd like to take. For me, it was different because I didn't have a game plan. I just knew I wanted to be involved in the business in some form or fashion. And here in Maple Leaf Gardens, they used to run shows every 3 weeks at the Maple Leaf Gardens. And I said to myself, you know what? I was a season ticket holder because I had talked to the office and they managed to get me seats second row ringside, right beside that infamous ramp that used to run from the dressing room level with the ring. And it was unique for the time, at least as far as I've seen, because we witnessed a lot of wrestling in our area on Saturdays, that's for sure. And I would take pictures and I'd come back to the next show and I would sell them for $2 a pop. And that would kind of fuel my wrestling habit where I'd pay for my tickets, I'd pay for my parking, little snacks while I'm there, and maybe make a few bucks on the side. And then, someone caught me doing it, which I found out later was not supposed to be, it was not quite legal because apparently trademark infringements, I had no idea about that kind of stuff. He said, you know what, you don't seem like a bad guy. Just, don't do it right in front of the building where everybody could see it. Just move down the block a little bit. And we became friends. His name was Ilio Zarlenga. He says, you know what, maybe I'll bring you on board. He used to take the pictures for the program, Stranglehold Magazine, that they used to have at Maple Leaf Gardens. He says, you know what, let me talk to Jack. Maybe I can bring you on board. You can help me out taking pictures ringside. And I'm thinking, oh man, that's cool. Maybe that's something I could do. So he introduced me to Jack and said, Jack said, we don't need another photographer. We'll find something for the kid to do. So my foot in the door was actually, I guess, for lack of a better term, being a gopher, doing all the odd stuff, whatever needed to be done. And to the point where Jack would hand me the keys to his big Fleetwood Cadillac that he had, this 84 Cadillac. And you go, and Jimmy, go to the airport Marriott and pick up Andre the Giant or something like that. And I'd be like, yes, sir. But inside I'm like a caged animal trying to stay calm. But I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to go pick up Andre the Giant, and I'm like, yes, sir, I'm on my way. And and from there, I got into a good relationship with Pat Patterson, who was really, really tremendous. And he was a funny guy and always clowning around. But one day he says to Jack, we got the kid here. He's, hanging around waiting for stuff to do. Why don't we use him? Why don't we make him a referee? Jack says to him, well, do we want to smarten the kid up? And Pat says to him, Jack, he's in the locker room with all the boys. He's hanging out. He's kind of got an idea what's going on. We don't have to kind of smarten him up. Let's use him. So he told me to get black sneakers, black pants, a blue shirt, and a black bow tie, and said, carry it with you at all times. So I said, okay, this is great. This is something I'd maybe really like to do. Maybe I can make a career out of this, but I wasn't smart enough to ask questions. Okay, I'm going to eventually referee someday, but how do I do this? What do I do? What is the procedure? What do I need to know? And that sort of stuff. So one day it was just, baptism by fire at a house show in Newmarket, Ontario, where Chief Jay Strongbow was the agent and said, Jimmy, you got your ref gear with you? And I said, yes, sir, Chief, I do. He says, put it on, you're reffing tonight. And what am I supposed to say? I haven't reffed a match before. I don't want to do this. I'm saying, okay. He says, it's SD Jones versus Jose Luis Rivera, the Red Demon. He says, get with them and, they'll tell you what you need to do. And I was good friends with SD. I was pretty close with him. And I said, SD, I got some good news and some bad news. He said, oh, yeah, what's the good news? I said, I'm reffing your match tonight. He says, oh, cool. He said, what's the bad news? I said, I'm reffing your match tonight. I've never reffed a match before. He said, don't worry. Stay close to me. I'll talk you through it, which he did. And I managed to get through the match at least. And that's when it clicked. The light bulb went off and said, okay, I need to start asking questions and going to the veterans and say, okay, what do I need to do? How is this done? And what is the procedure? And what is the actual job of a referee other than just standing there waiting to count three? And it was a long learning curve, but man, I was blessed to have some great mentors. So that's where the foot got in the door, and God bless, I was able to do it for over 20 years.
Which wrestlers then, Jimmy, did you find most helpful to you then, if you were kind of learning on the fly on that kind of basis?
Now, it was guys like I said, like an SD Jones, who was a veteran. You know, I know a lot of people remember him as enhancement talent on TV, but very skilled, knew his stuff. And, you know, Tito Santana. Tito Santana was another one. He was the guy who was, you know, someone you needed to count on, to be there all the time, to have great matches with anybody on the card. It was like Tito Santana, guys like that. And Tony Atlas. Tony Atlas was a big help. And I also got some really, really great help from people like Bobby Heenan. Bobby Heenan was so helpful early in my career, as well as Captain Lou. Captain Lou Albano was always great for advice. He says, you know, he would always tell me about when you needed to do a referee distraction. Hey, kid, come here. This is how we're going to do it. And, you know, you have to be aware, and timing and positioning and all that sort of stuff. It was great to have those mentors and those names, you know what I mean, helping me out. Kurt Hennig was another one. Kurt was amazing. And of course, people like Jack Lanza, the agents at the time. You know, I mentioned Chief J Strongbow, Tony Gurria, and Pat Patterson. Of course, Pat Patterson was just a brilliant at helping, you know, lay out matches and telling you exactly what you need to do.
You mentioned the rich history that older fans such as myself were privy to at Maple Leaf Gardens, all those great shows there. I know a fan on social media wanted to ask you about the matter of the great Jack Tunny and the Tunny family that, you know, ran the territory for the NWA before switching affiliations. And if you had any stories of dealing with either Jack or Frank, and also if you know what happened when Jack was phased out, so to speak, for Mr. Carl DeMarco, or how that process played out.
To be honest with you, I always had a great rapport with Jack Tunny. He was awesome. You know, when he took over, took over for his uncle Frank, because Ed Tunny was Frank's son, but Ed was good with doing the books and that sort of stuff. But Jack was good at being a promoter. You know, there are two different things there. So they both worked together in the promotion. And then when Vince came along and bought out, you know, the Maple Leaf Wrestling brand and, you know, became it specifically WWF at the time, Jack was kept on as, you know, the figurehead president, but he still ran the Canadian office. So, and then they said, you know, here's a guy that can, you know, present himself well as president of the entire company. You know, he was the figurehead president, and so to speak. You know, everyone knows that Vince had the final word and the final say in everything. So I don't know the exact, I wish I could tell you the exact reasoning why he was phased out as president. And and Carl was brought in, and it caught me off guard. I was friends with Carl DeMarco before he was brought in as president. I knew him. We got along really well. And then when they brought him in as president, you know, that rapport continued. And I never really, I wish I had a better answer for you, but I never heard the actual reasoning why Frank Tunny was phased out and Carl was brought in. You know, I like I said, I wish I had a better answer for you than that.
Do you think that the nature of the business changing from even when Jack was running the Toronto office, it sort of was the business was metamorphosed into a larger corporate entity that probably played into it, and the Toronto territory per se ceasing to be a recognizable entity and another stop, turning into another stop on the WWF calendar.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think that had a lot to do with it because they were starting to expand. They were putting their brand on everybody else's territory, like Maple Leaf Wrestling. It was no longer Maple Leaf Wrestling. It was WWF Wrestling at the time. And especially when they took over Turner Broadcasting's WCW station, they were on the station. And eventually, years later, of course, after the Monday Night Wars, we know what happened there. But going back to the 80s when Vince Jr. took over several territories, he was putting his brand on all of it. Now, he had acquired all the tapes and libraries from those companies, which in hindsight is, I think, a lot more valuable than having a name like Midwest Championship Wrestling or World Class Championship Wrestling or even Maple Leaf Wrestling. So those libraries are invaluable. And I think that was his idea behind it. And then he could sell them off later or be able to present them for a fee. Like, you know, I guess back in the day when people, for the young kids who don't know, Google it, they used to have VHS tapes that they used to sell, you know. I still have a bunch of them down in the basement somewhere. So I think that was the reasoning behind it, because he wanted to make everything under the WWE umbrella and instead of branching it off in different names.
I'm going to actually flash forward to like right now. Only a couple of days ago, I've heard you talk fondly before about Mr. Adam Copeland, Edge.
Mm-hmm.
Were you surprised by that kind of stunt that he done the other night? And obviously he's suffered an injury now and he's going to be out for a while. Were you surprised by something like that, a risk like that at his age?
Yes, only because of the age he's at. I'm not saying that he's frail or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. I know people are going to misinterpret that, and it's going to be viral. Oh, Jimmy Korderas says Edge is frail. No, you know, he has this passion and he wants to perform, and he puts his heart on he wears his heart on his sleeve every time he goes out there, and he gives it his all. And I think in that instance, if I could break it down, I can't speak for exactly what happened, but when he was on top of that cage, he probably rethought exactly how he wanted to land, because, you know, he had Malachi Black laid out on that table with the barbed wire, and, you know, it almost felt like he double clutched. And he thought, oh, if I do the actual splash on him, this could be bad for both of us. You know, sometimes when you're thinking it out backstage and you go, you know what, this would be a cool idea if we could do it, if we can pull it off. And then you get up there and you're ready to do it. And you go, you know what, maybe this isn't a good idea. So I give him credit for at least trying to readjust what the plan was to do. But at the same time, you know, he even said it himself recently that, you know, he should rethink some stuff like that, because in my opinion, he didn't need to do it because he's that over. Yes, I understand you want to give and give and give to that audience who supported you all these years. And he's a guy who, you know, wants to give it to him. But at times you have to know when to, you know, like a good announcer, lay out and not have to do that, because you can get that crowd doing other stuff that's not as risky. But, you know, I hope a speedy recovery. I texted him and I let him know that I was thinking of him and wishing him a speedy recovery. And he, you know, hopefully he heals well and can get back and do what he loves to do.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Like the man has got nothing to prove in the business. And like while we're talking about it, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Now, it's happened a while back, but the whole CM Punk leaving AEW, the releasing of the tape, all that nonsense, right, and how it made AEW look to you from someone within like the wrestling world.
Well, I thought it was a bad idea from when they even announced that they were going to do it. For two reasons. One, was it going to be a swerve? Was it going to be something little ha-ha? Was it going to be the actual tape? And that ended up being the actual tape. And I thought it was a bad idea at the time. I still think it was a bad idea, but I give them credit for at least trying to take something that was a bad idea and try to turn it into something positive that people will be invested in. You know, with this whole Jack Perry thing and him emerging from this as a big time heel. The only thing I thought from it originally was after it aired, it got the people in AEW to chant for one of the top guys in the other company. Their crowd was chanting for CM Punk, which I thought was counterproductive. And basically what it did was it felt like the reasoning behind showing that was because they had this bug up their butt because Punk went on the interview with Ariel Helwani and spoke his mind. Punk is a guy, I know Punk. He's not going to sugarcoat anything. He's going to tell it like it is, and he's going to tell his truth. Everybody, they say there's two sides to every coin, but in the middle, there's that edge. There, somewhere in the middle lies the truth. I didn't see anything in that video that Punk didn't say in that interview. And when you're watching it, there's no audio. So you don't know what the conversation was between the two. You don't know what actually happened. You don't know exactly what preceded that altercation. All you saw was that Punk choked him out like a 12-year-old, and Samoa Joe had to cradle him like a baby and take Jack Perry away. And, it just felt like it's a vanity project at times where they have to fight back. And if they concentrated on their own product and focused on their own stars, I think that would be better for the company. And it would show that they have a thicker skin, as opposed to every time something bugs them, they have to take a shot back on television. You're wasting valuable television time to retaliate to something that bothered you. You know what? Just leave it alone. Let it slide and concentrate on your own product. They have a lot of talented wrestlers out there that they're struggling to find TV time for. You don't need to show that crap. Save it for guys that could actually use it and benefit from the time on TV.
Yep.
Thinking back to when you began, a lot of fans did not understand how crucial the role of the referee is to a match, to TV, to you name it. You mentioned some of the greats that you sat under, not to quote Chris Jericho in AEW now, but his learning tree. You sat under that learning tree. How was that framed to you back in your initial career about what your role is and what you need to be aware of to make a match come off?
It's interesting you said that, because as a fan, and then as I began refereeing, I didn't understand the role of a referee. I really, truly didn't. I was learning on the fly. And then sitting under some learning trees, like Canadian guys, like a John Bonello, like a Wayne Cashman or somebody like that. And then, of course, getting to learn under the Hebners and Timmy White and some legends like that. I discovered that the role of the referee was vital in a match, because without a referee, you can't tell a story in a match. But the referee is not the story in the match. You're there to help the talent tell their story. They're the focal point. They're the ones, and you're there to help them tell that story by enforcing rules. Because if there are no rules, there's no point in putting a referee in the ring. Why have them there? The rules also help distinguish between villains and heroes, good guys and bad guys, heels and baby faces. Without a heel, without an established heel and established baby face, who am I cheering for? Who am I booing for? It's just, a match for whatever reason. And also the referee's job is to be that conduit between the talent to help communicate, because they just can't whisper to each other, okay, headlock, shoot me off, arm drag, whatever the case may be. So you go, tell them up there to tell them to go over, they'll say it to me while I'm checking on them while they're down selling, and I'm relaying whatever message, whether it's from gorilla position saying 4 minutes left, 3 minutes left, whatever the case, hey, can you continue? And then it's like 4 minutes to go. And you have to do it discreetly so it doesn't look like you're actually communicating a message. And then he'll say, tell him to take me in the corner and light me up or something like that. And so you go to the other guy, says, take him to the corner, light him up. And it's a whole bunch of things. And I find today's referees, some of them at least, try to be visible. They want to be noticed. And that's not your job. As I say, no one's ever paid a ticket to see me referee a match. And that's fine. I'm cool with that. I love being that background guy, that conduit between the guys to help tell the story and be invisible until I need to be seen for the finish or whatever the case may be. That's our job, and to, keep an eye on talent. Safety is also in key, because you never know any spot. It doesn't mean everything from a simple body slam, something can go wrong. So you have to be aware and look for signs to, evaluate, hey, is this guy good to go? And that trained wrestler mentality is, regardless of whether I'm banged up or whatever happened, I'm going to continue. I'm going to fight through and finish this match. It's all those things. It's so encompassing. And I don't think a lot of people realize that there's that much involved in being a referee.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Jack.
Well, I was just going to mention, and you hit it there, and it was going to be another question, but you've done some excellent commentaries on the role of the modern referee, and one of the ones, not to pick on anyone in particular, but one of the AEW referees really stands out in terms of becoming a character and being visible. Just from the perspective of becoming a centerpiece of attention, along with some matches where the referee is completely buried in terms of not paying attention to them. What do you think is behind that phenomenon? Because both I find are very distracting for enjoying the product otherwise.
I know. It's those little things, those little subtle things that a referee can do to help enhance a match, like reacting to a big move. Somebody throws a clothesline from hell because nobody threw a clothesline like JBL because people complain, I can't believe he took that guy's head off. No, it took two to make it look like he took his head off. And trust me, no, JBL was safer than anybody. It takes two to tango, as they say, and the other guy taking it makes it look as devastating as John makes it look through with the follow through. But if I see that, I'm not going to grab my chin like I got hit with, because this whole overselling stuff that they do now, like they get punched in the face and they go, oh, and they're grabbing their own face and they're clutching their own stomach and they're grabbing their own chest when somebody gets chopped. And like, why are you selling like you got hit? You know what I mean? It's okay. Subtleties. It's television. If you see something that looked a little snug, for example, and you go, oh, just a subtle little, oh, that looked like it connected. Oh, that looked like it hurt. Subtleties, little things, you don't have to go overboard. And these whole ref distractions that happen almost every match are done so lazily. Is that even a word? Lazily. It's like there's no thought process put behind it. It's like so-and-so will jump on the apron and keep you there for 40 seconds while all this stuff is going on behind the referee's back. And you're telling me this guy has no idea, or gal has no idea that all this shenanigans is going on behind them with all the noise going on. You're not tempted to go, oh, turn your head and take a look? Come on, it's just unrealistic. That was the beauty of guys like Eddie Guerrero when he threw the lie, cheat, and steal era and all that sort of stuff. All these quick referee distractions were very quick, very subtle, and meant more because it looked like they outsmarted the referee as opposed to making the referee look like a dumbass. Can I say this on here? Dumbass? Can I say that?
Yeah.
Yep. Make them look like a dumbass, and then the heat goes to them as opposed to where it's supposed to go on the guy who's manipulating the referee, the heel.
Yeah.
It just drives me insane. And I watch, and Brian Hebner and I have the podcast Reffing It Up. We some days we just lose it. Just go, why doesn't anybody know this? And I think part of the problem is nobody's giving them the feedback. Their own owner and their own boss, Tony Khan, said in an interview on Busted Open about a year and a half ago, he was interviewed by Bully Bubba, and he asked them, why do how do you address this issue with your referees not enforcing rules and all this stuff that's going on that just completely buries them and doesn't make them look good? How can you, I'm paraphrasing now because I don't remember the exact way he formed the question. And in a nutshell, Tony Khan said, well, our fans don't care about that stuff. And, when I heard that, I just wanted to throw something at my radio. I'm saying, how can you even answer it that way? It makes no sense. It has to make sense in the sense you're trying to present it as a sporting event. Then have rules. Sporting events have rules. You can't have guys fighting outside for 30, 40, 50, 2 minutes, 3 minutes at a time without getting counted out. It makes no sense. Anyway, I can go on for days, trust me.
One of the things I always found curious about the business, especially in, we'll say, the late 90s to early 2000s, internet was kind of becoming more and more of a thing. And obviously we're at a point now where everybody seems to know everything about the business. But to rewind it back to the late 90s into the early 2000s, how, in your opinion, was so much information being leaked to these websites back then, from your understanding, about who's coming back, what's going to happen, etc., etc.?
That's interesting. I never found out for sure what was going on, but obviously there was somebody who had some inside knowledge, and I think in a way intentionally leaked this information to certain websites, to certain dirt sheets, as they called nowadays. That's my personal opinion. I can't say that for a fact, but in my opinion, they were intentionally leaked out to gain some interest in at least that culture, in the hardcore fans who do subscribe to those, I guess, early websites, early newsletters, and that sort of thing. And when they do that, maybe they garner interest, especially with that hardcore base. And then from there, hopefully, they can garner some attention in some form or fashion, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A fan is asking here, Jimmy, what are your thoughts on, Virgil, who passed away recently, and of course, Brian Adams, Crush, the great, who passed away some time ago?
No, both have a soft spot for me in my heart. Virgil was just a fun guy to be around. He was always smiling, always having a good time. Crush the same. I had a great rapport with both of them. They were great guys. Anytime we lose anyone in this industry, it's sad, especially at an early age, when you think, my goodness, for anyone. But when you get to know these people and you travel up and down the road with them and you get to see them every day, and it hits home even more, because you do develop these friendships and these rapports with these people. And I know it sounds cliche for a lot of people, but it is true. They become your road family, because you guys, are going through the same, I don't want to say struggles, but you go through some tough times. You're on the road, especially back in the day. You're on the road for 250, 300 days a year. You hardly see your home family. You see the road family more than you do them. So you look after each other as best you can. You got each other's backs no matter what. And, like I said, it is sad to see so many of our brothers and sisters going at such an early age.
Sorry, Jack, go on.
No, go ahead, sir.
Our researcher who you were in contact with, Jake Walker, wanted me to ask you about your thoughts and opinions and memories of the Montreal screwjob.
Oh, that's an interesting one, because obviously I didn't get the Iggy on what was going on that night. Just watching it, I was, they started the match off. What we were told was as the officials who weren't in the match, stand by, because there's going to be this big schmoz at the end. You guys are going to run in and try and break it up and all that sort of stuff, and go that route. So they had the big fight outside in the crowd, and they sent us out there to kind of control things, in the sense that they were going through the crowd. So we didn't want anybody from the crowd to get too anxious and try and interject themselves. So kind of protect the talent in some form or fashion. So I got back to the gorilla position, and usually manning gorilla is Gerald Briscoe. Mr. Briscoe is the man. I love Gerald. He's great. But this night it was Bruce Pritchard manning the gorilla position, because Gerald had to go out with Mr. McMahon as part of the Stooges with Pat Patterson ringside. So that was his persona. So he was following that thing. So I'm standing right beside Bruce Pritchard watching the match as it's unfolding. And just as Earl takes that bump, and Bulldog and everybody else of Owen, where they were all there ready to run in for the aftermath of the match, and so to speak. And as I'm watching it, Earl takes the bump. I'm watching the monitor. I'm standing right beside Bruce, and he was the one who communicates with the referee. He's got the button that he presses in the microphone, and he's the one who gives us the times and all that sort of stuff, and whatever the agent for the match, if they want to communicate something to the referee, to the talent through the referee. So as I'm sitting there, Earl takes a bump. Sean gets the sharpshooter on, and I hear in my earpiece, "Okay, now Earl, get up and ring the bell now." It wasn't Bruce. I'm standing right beside him, and he's like watching the monitor like everybody else. And I went, "What the heck's going on here?" And all of a sudden Earl gets up, rings the bell. He's out of there, gone. And downstairs, apparently his brother Dave was in the car waiting, running, and has got in the car, and they're gone. I didn't know that part until the next day. But so as we're all standing around wondering what the heck went on, even Bruce had a surprised look on his face, but I'm not sure he wasn't aware. I mean, they kept the circle small, but at the same time, it threw everybody for a loop. And it was weird because there are a lot of conspiracy theories out there, and there's one that I may have bought into that I'm not sure if it was, I'm 50-50 on it, that maybe it wasn't something that maybe Brett had agreed to do for a short period of time, where Vince said, you know what, here's the deal. WCW is offering you a boatload of money, some ridiculous money. He says, he probably, maybe, I'm just speculating here. I'm not saying I've got the insight on this one. Maybe he said, you go over there for a little while, stir the pot, make that money, and when your deal's done, you come back here and you'll be the biggest star in the industry. And Brett probably said, you know what, that'd be cool. I could do that. Until the unfortunate thing with him and Goldberg, and then, of course, the unfortunate terrible tragedy with his brother Owen, I think, just soured everybody on a whole bunch of things, and of course, put an end to that idea. But I think that's a very plausible thing that may have happened that day, because one of the things that I didn't realize till afterwards was usually they have press credentials for people to come in, and they do the press, have access to the talent for interviews. And apparently that day, I did not know this, apparently that day, no press was allowed in the building, no press was allowed access. They were all told you can go sit in the crowd, but you have no access to the talent or anybody like that. You have to sit in the crowd like everybody else, which I found odd. They never do that. So I don't know. It's something to think about. I think, anyways.
Have you ever talked to Teddy Hart? Because he certainly shares that interpretation that you have.
Not about that. I've met him before. I haven't talked to him a lot, but I wasn't aware that he was of the same mindset. Like I said, I'm not convinced about it. I'm 50-50, but I think it's very plausible. Let's put it that way.
Looking back, Jimmy, on your 22-year career, you worked through so many, great time frames in the business, from the golden era to the new generation, Monday Night Wars, Ruthless Aggression, on and on. You were there during, some of the greatest time frames in the business, period. Not to ask you about a particular match or moment, but globally speaking, looking at those eras, what did you enjoy the most, and what would you consider the highlight of that particular time frame?
See, that's a good one, because like you said, I've been blessed to be, working through those eras and getting to see the changes in the business, and especially with that company through those years. But, I have a soft spot for the Attitude Era, because it was a lot of fun. If you're not having fun, then why are you bothering? You know what I mean? So it was fun for us too. We were enjoying it. We were having a blast. Everything, just the crew that was on the road, the stories and fun that we were having in the ring. We had guys like Stone Cold, we had Cena, we had Rock, we had Booker, we had JBL, we had Eddie, what a crew of guys we had. It was just, especially when we go on those overseas tours, because on overseas tours, they'd put us on these big buses. We travel on the buses together. Whereas when you're in the States or in Canada, you fly into a town, you get your car together, 3-4 guys, whoever it is, and you travel together like that. So everybody was kind of separate, doing their own deal. But on those trips, we're overseas and we're all together in the same bus, and just a lot of shenanigans, and nothing harmful, just good old fashioned adult humor, having fun, and for me, that was the fun part about it, the camaraderie. But as far as the in-ring stuff and getting to do and a lot of interesting, different stuff, the Attitude Era was fun for me.
And given the fact that you had such a lengthy career, what are your thoughts on the new entity, the combined UFC Endeavor WWE entity without, the chairman? I know you've been asked about, working with Vince McMahon all those years, but the new product without Mr. McMahon seems to be, they're looking to brand it as the, the Triple H era or whatnot. Mm-hmm. How do you think that will play out over the long term without a visionary, very divisive figure, no matter what? But you certainly can't argue that the man was a wrestling genius and a visionary.
No, I don't think he gets enough credit nowadays for that, because of the the situation he's in now, I think people have forgotten that, and I'm not condoning any alleged allegations or anything like that. But as far as on the wrestling side, wrestling mind, he was the one who created this juggernaut that has become a global monster. And that being said, now in the hands of someone like a Paul Levesque, Triple H, who has a brilliant mind for the business, because he's a wonderful booker. And what you need to succeed in this business is someone who can book and has a vision. And not only that, has an open mind to suggestions. And he's got someone like a Paul Heyman by his side. He's got other great minds by his side that he can pick and choose and find out what works. And what Paul does best is, everybody says, okay, what's the next step in booking? Here's where we're going to start our story. Where do we go next? What they're doing, I believe, is starting backwards. Here's our end game. Here's where we want to be. How do we get there? Now take steps backwards and work that way. And I think that makes a lot more sense, because if you know where you're going, then it's easier to tell that story from a booking standpoint. If you're starting off and you're trying to go, where do we go next? What's the next step? And then you're trying to get to an end game that you're not sure where you're going. It's more difficult, I think. That's the way I think they're doing it right now. And I think he's doing it right. And in a lot of aspects, like anything else, it's not perfect. There'll be some hiccups here and there, of course, like everywhere else. But for the most part, I think he's got his pulse on the finger of wrestling fans on a more broader scale, as opposed to just catering to a niche audience. And he's open to working relationships. Look like on NXT this week. Ethan Page, who I'm a big fan of, shows up. Jordan Grace, who's awesome, shows up, and she's the TNA champion. There's a lot of good stuff in the pipeline, I believe, and I know people it's the post WrestleMania hangover. You get that every year, but hey, now we're going to start building up to SummerSlam, which I think is going to be another banger, as I guess the kids call it nowadays, and Sheamus. But I think he's doing a great job right now, and especially from the top to bottom, because we have stories going not only at the top of the card with guys like Cody and Damian Priest and whoever's involved with that. There's mid-card great stories, like with the Sami Zayn and Chad Gable and all that stuff going on. The Bloodline is still a thing. We saw that King of the Ring tournament now that had stakes, and Queen of the Ring tournament that had stakes, where the winner of the tournament gets a shot at the champion at SummerSlam. So things are making sense, and you're giving me reasons to want to tune in. And that's the big thing. I get the idea of putting dream matches together, but if you're not giving me a reason other than this would be a cool match, what entices me to want to tune in next week? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Jimmy, we kind of just mentioned Vince there, and like one of his most iconic moments for funny reasons was, and I've heard you talk about this before, but I'd like you to share with the listeners about the Royal Rumble in 2005 with the Batista Cena. If you want to tell that story, it's a great one.
Oh, so of course, it was Raw versus SmackDown in a Royal Rumble match, and myself and Charles Robinson was the referees representing SmackDown, and Jack Doan and Chad Gable. Okay, I'm already there. Chad Patton were the referees representing the Raw side, and the final two participants, Dave Batista, John Cena. Dave was Raw, John was SmackDown. The spot was supposed to be both go over the top rope. Batista hangs onto that top rope. John takes the fall to the floor. Batista's the winner and goes on to WrestleMania to face the champ. Things didn't work out that way. As they went over the top, I mean, it's the Royal Rumble. There's so many guys in the ring, and they're all sweaty, and they're hitting the rope. To hang on is tough because it's wet and it's slippery. He just slipped. He lost grip. And when they landed, when we saw it back, you couldn't have timed it any more perfectly that these guys landed at precisely the same time. But we didn't see it from our vantage point. So, automatically Jack Doan runs over and raises Batista's hand because that was the finish of the match, that he was going to be the winner. And I guess they saw it back in the gorilla position because we heard Gerald Briscoe go, one of the SmackDown refs run over and raise John Cena's hand. So now they're calling it on the fly, which is so run over and raise John Cena's hand, and we're having the bickering back and forth. No, Batista won. No, Cena won. No. And while this is going on, we're hearing in our earpiece, the other referees go find Teddy Long and Eric Bischoff, the respective general managers, because they wanted them to come out and get into a little discussion and restart the match with just those two in it. Couldn't for some reason they couldn't find him. I don't know where they were. And here comes Vince. Now, when I saw him come out and start storming to the ring and take his jacket off and throw it down and stuff like that, there's a definite difference between the Mr. McMahon character when he's coming down the ring and the angry Vince. This was angry Vince. He was hot. So he comes storming down to the ring. He flies under the bottom rope, gets up, and all of a sudden he goes down on his ass. And we all went, what's he doing? He's not moving. He's not even attempting to. And he's, come here, goddammit. And like, yes, sir. He says, so he starts barking instructions, what we should do, what's going on here? And, we're raising the hands back and forth. And so he goes, restart the match. So he struggles to get out of the ring. And we're still wondering what the heck's going on because we don't know. And he's, guys are coming over to help him back and he's brushing him away. Get away from me. And he struggled to make it backstage, but he did it on his own. And then we found out later he tore both his quads. And we were thinking, he tore both his quads and he made it back by himself? That's insane. You know what? I guess he was, it would have been hurt his pride to have someone help him back or something like that. I don't know. But man, it was like we had no clue what would happen until we found out the next day. And, we were chuckling to ourselves, but we never do it in front of him.
A fan is wanting to know, Ibzan is wanting to know your thoughts on Gorilla Monsoon, who is, from what I understand, getting a biography completed by Brian R. Solomon, who wrote the great one on the original Sheik. Oh,
Gorilla was awesome. Gorilla was just a big teddy bear. You know what I mean? You can go up to him. You can talk to him about anything. And he also was there for advice because he was one of those guys you can go to. And that's, that's the thing. You go to the veterans and ask the guys who have been there. And he helped everybody. He was open to everybody. And, we would sit there and pick his brain at times because his son, the late Joey Morella, who is, God bless him, we would go to him because Gorilla nicknamed him and I, because I had hair that back then. He nicknamed us the Bookends because it came from WrestleMania 4 when when we were carrying the trophy down to ringside from the back down that rampway it's in Atlantic City. And when we were going through rehearsals the day before, he just said, okay, so what we're going to do is the Bookends are going to pick up the trophy and walk it down. We're like, okay. But yeah, I loved Gorilla. He was awesome.
Talk to me then, Jimmy, about the difference between, because I've seen you over the years here in Ireland. I do have a photo of me and you together in 2004, I believe it was. But I have a physical photo, and I don't know where it is since I moved to this house, but I will dig it out. It was at a show in Ireland. Steve Austin came over for some reason, and it was an outdoor show. There was 18,000 people there. You were setting up the ring. I got a photo with you. Mm-hmm. But the difference in like watching you guys on TV and then watching you guys on a live event, it's completely different because everything is way more relaxed. There's a lot more fun. Can you describe to the people the difference between working a TV match and a live event match?
Well, TV matches, as you probably can tell, are a lot more structured because you have a time that you have to hit. Everything has to be timed specifically to a certain, like everyone has a match and listen, okay, you guys got 12 minutes. You have to hit your times. You know what I mean? And then we have to get to this segment next. You're getting people yelling at you, tell them to hurry up and get her done and get out of there because we got to get to the next segment, especially if the next segment is something that needs extra time, like a Rock and Cody or something like that. You know what I mean? Because they're going to be allowed some leeway, that's for sure. So you don't want to take away from those moments, but at the same time, you want to display what you got. But at house shows, yes, yeah, how long do you want us to go? I don't know. They'll tell you they want you to go about 15, 20 minutes. So there's a lot of leeway. There's a lot of things. You don't have to structure the match as you do on television, bit by bit by bit. Okay, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do that. Hey, we'll start it off this way, see how the crowd's responding. And that's where you guys would have fun trying to see what kind of a reaction they could elicit from the crowd and say, hey, you know what? Did you hear the crowd when we did this? Let's try that next time when we're on TV. So you got to experiment, you got to have a little fun, loosen up a little bit. I remember times when, you know, one of our locker room leader, the Undertaker, never broke kayfabe in the ring. Never. He was the dead man. He was trying to get him to do a spin-a-rooney and stuff like that. When, you know what I mean? Just having a lot of fun. Shenanigans with Owen in the ring were just hilarious. I can't tell you how many times he untied my shoelace, and I still to this day don't know how he did it in the middle of a match. And they just nonchalantly go, Jimmy, your shoe's untied. And, oh my, how did he do it? You know, and he's laughing, of course, you know, and we just had fun, just laying it out there, you know, just, we did some, and a lot of stuff was called on the fly, especially with guys like Eddie and Chavo doing their lie, cheat, and steal stuff. A lot of the ideas that got incorporated into television were done on live events. You know, it was just brilliant. You know, Edge and Christian getting to work with the Hardys and stuff like that, and getting to lay some stuff out, and with the Dudleys, and now figuring out, okay, you know what, when we get to the TLCs, we can do this and this and this. So, you know, you get great ideas from those live events to help incorporate them and see how you can fit them in on TV and make them make sense.
Jimmy, Guardian of Chaos is asking if you have any thoughts on working with the highly controversial Louisville slugger, Mr. Jim Cornette.
No, I had a great time working with Corny. He was awesome, you know, and he's a great mind for the business. I know he's having a lot of fun on his shows, on his YouTube and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, that's him. He likes to stir the pot. And, you know, I could just picture him sitting there typing away, going on his tangents, and just laughing his butt off at everybody who's firing back at him, because that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to push some buttons and he's having fun. But as far as working with him, awesome. He another old school mind who knows how to do it right. And I know people say there's no right or wrong way. There's only what works. But there is a groundwork that works best, as I like to say, because the business does evolve. But at the same time, there are basic fundamentals of wrestling that still should be incorporated today. Like I like to explain it, like when the wheel was invented, it was made of solid stone, and it was heavy as all hell. And then it was developed. They started making it out of wood. And then it was rubber. Then it was vulcanized rubber and run flat tires. And the evolution of the tire, of the wheel, over those years. But at the end of the day, the wheel is round, because if it's not round, you can't continue to go forward. So you need that foundation. That's the way I like to explain it, if it makes any kind of sense to anybody out there besides me.
And not necessarily highlighting Cornette in this respect, but I know you've also done a lot of commentary on the tribalism aspect that has grown up in the business, you know, specifically, you know, AEW versus WWE, and then just negative general criticism, which I don't understand why some fans that call themselves fans would hope for the failure of one company over another, because that eliminates jobs for everyone. How do you think the fandom moves past that kind of overly, and maybe it's just a social media or an internet thing, but the overly negative focus and criticism on particular companies, performers, what have you?
Stop trying to analyze everything like you are, somebody on ESPN or somebody like that, analyzing a football game or anything like that. I do some analytic work, for lack of a better term, because I've been asked to, and I could sit back. I could do both. I could sit back and watch as a fan and be entertained, regardless of what three letters precede the company name. I could sit back and be entertained. But if I'm breaking things down, I could see things from a different set of eyes that says to me, you know what, that doesn't make sense. I would have liked to have seen this instead, or presented in this form or fashion. It doesn't mean I'm crapping on them. I'm just saying this is a criticism that I think if they adjusted it this way, tightened these screws that way, I think it could be presented better on television, be more fan friendly for a larger audience, instead of trying to cater to a niche audience. But as far as the tribalism that's going on, it's become like politics. It's us versus them. You know, if you don't like what they're doing, then you hate these guys. You want them to go out of business, and these guys are horrible human beings, and we hate these guys. I don't know where this comes from. I really don't. I'm a wrestling fan. I love all wrestling. It doesn't matter what brand it is. Like this Sunday, I went to an indie show here in Toronto. Some friends of mine asked me to come down and visit, and I went to visit. I loved it. Yeah. Now watching it, am I going, could this stuff be presented on national television? The way it was presented, no. But it was a fun show. It was fun. I was enjoying it. I was entertained. But for them, it has to be either you're with us or against us. We can't be, there's no respectful discourse and conversation going back and forth, because everybody has this anti-you, anti-them mentality. And I think a lot of the defensive people, especially on the AEW side, I'm not picking just them, but especially on them, is their hatred for the other guys, the other team, fuels it more than their like for their brand, if that makes any kind of sense. Because it's like, you're a fan of AEW, great, so am I. I want to see them succeed. I have friends there that are making a great living, and God bless them for doing that. But I'd like to see them stick around. And when I see stuff that makes me think, you know what, if they continue down this path, maybe they won't be here. They've been around for 5 years. I'd like to see them stick around for another 50, if they can. You know what I mean? Because if they do well, all of wrestling does well. All companies that will flourish from, and it's not a competition. Stop making it a competition. Everybody remembers the Monday Night Wars and say how great that is, and now we have competition. No, the competition then. You guys are on the same. Those guys are on the same night in the same time slot, battling for viewers. You're not on the same night in the same time slot. You have your own night dedicated to your guys. Just leave it that way. Enjoy it if you like. If you don't like the other brand, instead of watching it to crap on them, don't watch it at all if you don't like it. Simple. But they have to watch it because they have to find things to nitpick about and dig at, and it's just gotten ridiculous. It's like with politics, I'm very apolitical. I don't choose. I don't vote for a lawn sign. I don't care what color your lawn sign is. It doesn't matter to me. I want to listen to the person who's running, hear what they have to say, and if it makes sense to me and it resonates with me, guess what? You may get my vote. If it doesn't, I'm not thinking about voting for you. And that's the same way with my wrestling. If you're doing something on television that I like and resonates with me, guess what? I'm going to continue watching. If you do something that I'm thinking, I don't know, if I'm questioning what I'm seeing on television, then I may tune out. It's simple as that. But the tribalism has to stop, because it's just making it worse and fueling a bad element of the anti-social media out there.
You've been in the business for so many years, as Jack alluded to, so many decades, and so many things were on the screens of WWE. And I always kind of bring questions like this up. Like, was there anything that ever aired on WWE when you were there that you thought, like a segment or anything like that, maybe that's a bit too much? Like the things that come to mind are some Katie Vick things and different things like that. But is there anything in particular that stands out to you?
If there's one thing, because it stands out mostly because it almost made Mark Henry chuck his cookies, was when Mae Young gave birth to the Hand. I thought, what the heck is going on here? I mean, I get it. It was supposed to be ha-ha. It was supposed to be funny, but even comedy in wrestling, when it works, is great. When you see a guy like today, like a Ron Killings, R-Truth, who just, I love his type of humor. It cracks me up. But when I saw that kind of thing, I just said, you know what? I think we didn't just jump the shark. We landed on it. So right in his mouth. That one really stands out for me.
In terms of the next generation, I know, and we'll get to where the fans can keep up with all your activities, your podcast, etc. But given the fact that the referee position is going to continue to be done well, it is going to continue to be a crucial element of pro wrestling product, even from my level, the indie level, or national companies. What advice would you give to those that want to follow in your footsteps and Earl's footsteps, Brian's footsteps, and all the greats that we can think of. And do you see that as an area? I know we hear a lot about, developmental for wrestlers, et cetera, et cetera. How does the outlook look for the next generation of referees?
That's an interesting question. The best advice I could give them right now, the young crop of referees out there, is to always look for feedback, always ask questions, ask some veterans if they have time to watch your matches. Wrestlers study tape of all the greats, the great workers, not the great wrestlers, the great workers of all time, because there is a difference. I know I'm getting off topic here, but there is a difference between being a great wrestler and a great worker. You take somebody who can go out there and do every move in the book and pull it off brilliantly. But when they, you need that complete package. You need to be able to tell the story and put those in where they make sense. And I'll give you an example when I'm done here, but because it got me a lot of heat on the internet. What a shock, the Canadian heat magnet over here. But as far as the referees, you could do the same thing. Go watch tapes of an Earl Hebner. Go watch tapes of a Tommy Young, a young Brian Hebner, even Brian Hebner from TNA days, because that's when he really got he was good when he was in WWE. Don't get me wrong, but when he got to TNA, he really for lack of a better term, figured it out. And there's a lot of great ones out there that you can study. Look at their mannerisms, look how they present themselves, especially in television where we do what they call working the horseshoe, because you got that hard camera shot. You kind of don't want to cross in front of it, so you got to work the three sides that are not the hard camera shot, and try to stay out of it as best you can. Keep your cadences consistent regardless, because I see one of the things I see a lot is, I know as the match progresses and the false finishes come along and everything is getting amped up, they tend to count quicker when it is the finish. It's almost like that slight little extra speed. For me, that's a dead giveaway. Try not to give away anything like that. And again, like I said, listen to your veterans, listen to your peers, and always ask for feedback. If nobody's giving it to you, it means they don't care. You know what I mean? And I think that's part of the problem I'm talking about with with that company today. So as I was told by somebody there, well, nobody has said anything to me in the last 5 years or complained about my job, what I'm doing there. And I told them, well, there's your problem. Maybe somebody should, because you've got some great minds, at your disposal. Why don't you use them? And that's what I'm telling these young guys today. Just ask questions and learn, watch and learn, and be a sponge all the time. Even today, I don't think I know it all, because I'm watching and I'm learning stuff on the fly here. As I watch something and I go, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I would have handled it different if I'd have been in that predicament. Oh, always be a sponge, keep learning. And as far as, like I said, that tweet that got me a lot of heat, I just said Randy Orton, to me, is the most complete wrestler in the game today, period. And that's all I said. I didn't talk about anybody else. In my opinion, that is my opinion. And everybody came back with, what about this guy? What about that guy? You're crapping on this guy. I'm just saying that the one guy, there are a lot of great talents out there. There's fantastic talents in all companies out there. I just said that this guy is the most complete. He does everything from in-ring work to selling to psychology to facially, the emotions that he emotes when he's in there, his promo skills, everything. He's able to turn that switch on and off when it comes to intensity. He does everything brilliantly.
He's a natural.
Yeah, absolutely. And he has been that for a long, long time. And that's all I'm saying. It's not a knock on anybody else. I'm just giving Randy his flowers.
Yep. And you're entitled to your opinion after 22 years on WWE television. It's not as if you're just some guy on the street sending out a tweet. Like, that's what when we were talking earlier about guys being critical of the business, and I only listen to people that are within the business, if that makes sense, because it's their opinions that count, because they've been there and they've lived it.
I appreciate that. I don't claim to be a know-all, because we're always learning at any craft. We're always learning. And it's like I say, I love watching cop dramas. Like, plugging shows like Law and Order and stuff like that. I love watching those shows. It doesn't mean I think I can go out there and enforce the law. I watch shows with the, medical shows, doctor shows, or with surgeons down there. I love those shows because I've been a big fan of those shows for a long time. Do I think I can perform surgery? No. One of my favorite shows of all time, The West Wing. Love that show. Do I think I could be president? No. You know what I mean? It just boggles my mind. And the one other example I'm going to use is I've been a hockey fan forever, since I was a kid. One of the few people who is still alive when the last time the Maple Leafs won the Stanley Cup. So, they're near and dear to my heart. And I have my opinions when I watch a game and I say, that guy had a bad game. This guy should have been doing this. Going back to when the Leafs got eliminated, greatest false finish of all time in hockey when they were up 1-0 against Boston. Yes, I'm going off tangent here. And then Boston tied it. They go to overtime. The puck gets shot into the corner. Samsonov could have got out there and played the puck and eliminated Pasternak from getting it, but Nylander let him go instead of follow. You know what I mean? There are so many things there, but that doesn't mean I think I can coach this team to a Stanley Cup. Anyways, again, one of those things I can go on for days and days about.
Well, Jimmy, you've been extremely generous with your time tonight. Very much appreciated.
I'm sorry. I just saw it here, and just to make everything clear, I am not under a Legends deal. I don't get a paycheck from anybody, from any company. Not from Stanford, not from Jacksonville, not from anywhere. So you know what? The opinions I express are mine and mine alone, and they're honest opinions.
And where can the fans keep up with those opinions and all your happenings?
Well, you can find me at Jimmy Korderas on Twitter, at Real Jimmy Korderas on Instagram, and also on Facebook. You can find me there as well. You can find me doing the Wrestling Inc. podcast Monday nights after Raw and Wednesday nights after Dynamite, and also the Roughing It Up podcast with my good brother in Stripes, Brian Hebner, and I, and RJ, who holds the glue together. He's the guy who has to push the buttons because, us old farts don't know what we're doing. So we had a great one this week. Our guest this week, Les Thatcher. Oh, my goodness. He had us rolling in tears. It was a fun episode. And, of course, my ref and rants on all my social media platforms from Monday to Friday. Just little critiques here and there that I think could tighten some screws. And again, not to tear down, but in my opinion, maybe help a little bit.
And you can be seen wearing very nice and interesting and different T-shirts every day as well.
Well, I try because I got a stash downstairs. My wife's not happy about it, but there's a lot of them down there. Every once in a while, I run across one and go, I still have this thing? Oh, my goodness.
Well, Jimmy, want to thank you once again for your time today. Engaging interview as always, and we'll be sure to keep in touch and hopefully do this again.
Absolutely. Thank you for the time. Thank you for letting me rant here as well. I really appreciate it. And you guys take care. I've had a blast, man.
Thank you so much, Jimmy.
Well, fans, that's it for this edition of the Cheap Heat Productions Pro Wrestling Podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe and like these videos, and we will catch you next time. Take care, everybody.